we're carrying on today thinking about men and women of the Bible and also in more recent history who have had exceptional faith. Last week I think you talked about Noah and being laughed at, so having faith even when you're kind of being ridiculed or teased for what you think is right or what you think God's talking to you about. And this week we're going to think about Abraham and how we can have faith even when that takes a really long time to see what that actually means, having faith in the long term. Before we do that, we're going to play a quick game. Now, our game today is one you might have played before. We're going to play I Spy. So, have a look at what you can see behind me. And I'm going to have a look. Okay. I spy, with my little eye, something beginning with F. What do you think it could be? Maybe you can shout out some ideas of what you think it is that I have seen that begins with an F. It was the fireplace. Well done. Okay, we'll do two more. I spy with my little eye something beginning with or C. Something beginning with or C. What can you see that begins with that letter? Can't see a clock. Can't see any curtains. It's the chair. That's a bit tricky because it starts with a ch sound, but also a k sound. Oh goodness. Anyway, our final one. I spy with my little eye something beginning with H. H. What is it, do you think? I'll give you a clue. It's up here. That is a picture of Holy Trinity Clapham, our church. Now, some of you will know that actually the church is open again now. And if you are able to, you can join us there at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So you are very welcome. You might be enjoying watching the services online and at home with your family, but just know that at 11 a.m. on a Sunday morning, the church is open and we would love to see you and your family there. I'm going to hand over now to Lydia, who's going to give us our little talk and our teaching. So get comfy, get ready and enjoy.
Fantastic. So we are looking at the topic of faith again this week. So we thought about it last week when we thought about Noah. And today we're going to think about a guy in the Bible called Abraham. But before we get to that bit, I was wondering, what do you think the word faith means? What does the word faith mean? When we think of faith, we often think of God, or we think of church, or we think of different religions. And faith actually means to have complete trust or confidence in something or someone. So, what sort of things might you guys have faith in? Maybe you have faith in your parents that they're going to look after you, that they'll put food on the table, and that they'll tuck you in at night before you go to bed. Or maybe you have faith in your teachers, that they're going to be at school when you get there in the morning, and that they're going to teach you your sums and your reading. Or maybe you have faith that on a Sunday, when you turn up to church, Rosie and I are going to be at the front doing the actions for you guys. We have faith in different things. We expect different things to happen. And as adults, we often have faith in certain things and certain expectations. So we have faith that if we work hard, that hard work will pay off. Or we have faith that good things will happen to good people. But actually, God is the only person that we can have complete faith in. And I'm going to read us a Bible verse now. So this comes from the book of Hebrews. It's Hebrews 11, verse 1. and it describes to us what the word faith means. So it says, faith means being sure of the things we hope for, and faith means knowing that something is real even if we do not see it. And as I said before, God is the only thing that we can have complete faith in and complete hope in. And he is the only person that will never let us down. Now, I might not be able to physically see God standing right next to me, but I know in my heart that he is completely real. And I know that because of the different things that he's done for me in my life. I have experienced him in my heart. And back to Abraham. So we're going to look at Abraham now. And he is described as a man of faith. And so back in the book of Hebrews that I just mentioned, I'm going to read a little bit of this book for you. And it tells us what the people thought about Abraham. So Abraham is from the Old Testament, and we're now in the New Testament, so we're after Jesus. And these people were writing about people from the Old Testament, and this is what they said about Abraham. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed God's call to go to another place that God promised to give him. He left his own country, not knowing where he was going to go. It was by faith that he lived in the country God promised to give him. He lived there like a visitor who did not belong. He lived in tents with Isaac and Jacob, who had received that same promise from God. Abraham was waiting for the city that has real foundations, the city planned and built by God. He was too old to have children, and Sarah was not able to have children. It was by faith that Abraham was made able to become a father. Abraham trusted God to do what he had promised. This man was so old that he was almost dead, but from him came as many descendants as there are stars in the sky. There are as many as the grains of sand on the seashore that cannot be counted. All these great men died in faith. They did not get the things that God promised his people, but they saw them coming far in the future and were glad. So that is Abraham showing us how much faith he had. Now you might have heard of the story of Abraham before, and I'm going to tell us the story very briefly, and some pictures are going to pop up on the screen as I tell the story. So a long time ago, there was a man called Abram, and he lived in a place called Haran, and he owned many animals, and these included sheep and cattle. And Abram was a good man, and he lived with his wife called Sarai, but they didn't have any children. Now one day, God visited him, and he gave him a message. He said, I want you to pack up all of your things and leave your home. He wanted him to go to a new land. And he made a promise to Abram. He said, I promise I will bless your family. And so Abram trusted God. Now, Abram was about 75 years old. And he and his wife, Sarai, they packed up all of their things and they moved to a new land called Canaan. Now, one night, after a hard day's work, God appeared to Abram again. And he told him to look into the sky and count all of the stars. And he explained that he would have as many descendants as there were stars in the sky. But Abram and Sarai, they didn't really believe God. They couldn't have a baby and they were really, really old at this point. And then a bit later on, 3 visitors came to visit them. And they were messengers from the Lord. And they said that Sarah would give birth to a child. So God changed their names. He changed their names to Abraham and to Sarah. And they said that Sarah was going to have a child. And at this point, Sarah was 90 years old. But months passed, and she did. She had a baby, and they named that baby Isaac. And they thanked God for the gift of Isaac. And so Abraham had faith in the long term. He waited 100 years to have a baby. He was 100 years old when Isaac was born. And he had faith in God. He believed the promise that God had told him. He believed that he was going to have a baby and that he was going to have loads of descendants. But actually, that wasn't the end of the story. That was only the beginning of the story. And Abraham knew this, and he believed in God's promise. So God had said that he would have as many descendants as stars in the sky. So he'd have as many relatives as there were stars in the sky. So the people that were going to come after him in his family line, there was going to be so many of them. But when he died, he didn't have a massive family actually. And we read that in the Hebrews verses. He didn't have loads of children, but he trusted in God. And he knew that God would keep his promise in the long term. And God did exactly that. Abraham had loads of descendants. And one of these descendants was Jesus. And so this is actually part of the story of Jesus. So God had a long-term plan. And Abraham knew this. And he trusted God. And so I'm going to read a verse from Hebrews again. It's verse 13, and it says, "All these great men died in faith. They did not get the things that God promised his people, but they saw them coming far in the future and were glad." So they knew that God was going to do these things in the future, and they trusted him. And so even when they died, they hadn't actually seen these promises, but they trusted that God was going to do this. They had faith in the long term. And actually, God still does this today. He still promises things to us today, and he still expects us to have faith in the long term. And so I'm going to interview someone now. We're going to have a special guest on in a second, and we are going to think about someone who had faith in the long term and who trusted in God. So I am joined with Amanda, and some of you guys might recognise Amanda. She has helped us in some of our groups before. And Amanda is going to talk to us about a lady called Jackie who had faith in the long term. So who was Jackie Pullinger?
So Jackie Pullinger was a missionary who got on a boat because God told her to, even though she didn't know where she was going to get off. And she prayed for God to tell her where to get off, and she got off at Hong Kong. And then she went to a place called the Walled City.
Great. And what happened when she was there? What did she do?
Yeah, so the Walled City in Hong Kong was this area which was completely lawless. So it was filled with gangs, which were called triads, and they ran opium dens, so they all took drugs, and there were lots of criminal warfare, lots of people getting killed. Women weren't treated very well, so it was this illegal place without any law. And she went in there and she told people about Jesus.
Amazing. And how did Jackie have faith in the long term?
Yeah, so Jackie always tells this story that she went into the walled city and it was really smelly and you couldn't see the sky because there were all these overhead buildings and there were rats in the gutters. But she says that she saw another city when she went in. So she was able to persevere because she had this vision of a new city rather than the city which she saw.
And can you tell me a little bit more about her faith?
Yeah, sure. So Jackie had this vision or this dream of another city. So whenever she was walking around the walled city and seeing all the crime and the warfare and the dirt and the rats, she always had this vision of another city in her mind, and that would be what she would pray for. And actually she kept on praying for that. And 40 years later, the walled city got knocked down, and actually what she saw in faith happened in reality. A new city was built, and that whole area is now a park and this beautiful community city, garden city.
Amazing. And Amanda, how do you know so much about her?
Yeah, so I also, God gave me a dream that I was going to go to Hong Kong. So I also went to Hong Kong. I got on an aeroplane with a one-way ticket, and I was out in Asia for about 4 years, and I worked with Jackie, and she is the kindest person that I've ever met.
Oh, amazing. And that's such a great story, isn't it, of someone who I know and who you guys know who had faith, Amanda, and then Jackie as well, who had a vision of this new city, and you know that came true, that happened. God kept his promise, and she had faith in the long term. So we are going to pray now and we are going to think a little bit about having faith in the long term in our prayers.
So now we are going to pray together this morning. And to help us pray today, we are going to use a teaspoon. Now, that might sound a little bit funny, so let me explain to you how we're going to use the teaspoon to help us pray today. So we are going to pray in 3 different parts today. So the first part is thanks, and we can remember that because T is the first sound we hear in the word teaspoon. So we're going to be giving thanks to God for all of the wonderful things that He does for us in our lives. The second part of our prayer is the S or the S sound that we hear in the word teaspoon. Here we're going to be saying sorry to God. Sorry for the times that we might not have trusted God, and sorry for the times that we forgot to talk to Him. And then the third part of our prayer is the P or the P sound in the word teaspoon. And that's where we're going to be saying please to God and asking Him for things that are really important to us. So it's going to be a 3-part prayer. So saying thanks, saying sorry, and saying please to God. And we can remember that with a teaspoon. So let's pray. First of all, thanks to God. Dear God, thank you that you are always there for us, and that you know everything about us, and that you always love us. Thank you that we can live our lives knowing you and knowing that you're always with us. Amen. So, the second part of our prayer that we're going to go now is sorry, saying sorry to God for the things that we might have done wrong. Dear God, we're sorry for all the times that we haven't remembered to trust you with every part of our lives. And we're sorry for when we forget to talk to you and when we forget to spend time with you. Amen. And then the third part of our prayer today is the P. It's the please part of our prayer. So we're asking God here. Dear God, we ask that you can please help us to put you as number 1 in our lives. Please help us to always trust in you. And please help us to remember that you love us, you always have loved us, and you always will love us. Amen. Now we're going to do an action song together. So everybody jump up, find some space, and get ready to sing.
1, 2, 3, 4. Jesus, I love you deep down in my heart. Jesus, I love you deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart.
Too easy!
It's too easy. Okay. Jesus, I love you deep down in my heart. Jesus, I love you deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart.
Too easy!
Still too easy. You guys are too good. Jesus, I love you deep down in my heart. Jesus, I love you deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. We're gonna go deep, deep, down, down, deep down in my heart. Well done, everyone.
Thank you so much to to Tabs and to Lydia and to Amanda, who've all been part of putting together our video. It's been great to have you with us, and we hope that we will see you soon. Remember, you're very welcome at church on Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. See you next week.